Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you for joining and welcome at today's follow-up webinar focusing on volatility of the soy market and the sustainability impact of changing prices and premiums. This webinar was also organized under the umbrella of the Collaborative Soy Initiative, briefly CSI, together with ProTerraFoundation. I am Amisha van Manen, the director of the ProTerraFoundation, and will introduce you briefly to this webinar. So before we start, just the three main logistics of the webinar. So you have been now put on mute, or please stay mute if you're not speaking to avoid any background noise while others speak. The meeting is recorded, so you will have the possibility to access the recording after the webinar, which will be sent out and also put on the website. And please don't hesitate to share your questions and ideas. You can do it by raising your hand because this is a dialogue session. So please feel free to add anything, any moment. The webinar is planned to end around 2 o'clock. But to refresh our memories a bit, what happened actually during the last webinar, of which this is the follow-up dialogue session, because we had so much to talk about that and the presenters had such interesting information to share with us that we actually ran out of time and didn't have time for the Q&A at the end. So this is the idea that today, as a follow-up to the webinar that took place on 2nd of June, we have today the possibility with our speakers and participants to discuss these topics, because this is so relevant this year. Everyone who's involved in trading knows how difficult year we have this year. So what happened during the last webinar? First, Helene, who's also today with us from IUCN, and she is also the CSI coordinator, initiated the session, and she emphasized CSI's vision of 100% conversion-free, sustainable soy production and market uptake on a global scale. This CSI would like to achieve by sharing information and creating synergies. CSI brings together stakeholders and organizes meetings such as meta meetings or working groups and informative webinars such as this one. Afterwards, Solidaridad, Gert van der Blij, who's the EU policy advisor, took over, and he presented some experience working together with soy supply chains. He covered a few topics such as soy prices and premiums, the concept of volatility, and also the role of the farmers in sustainable supply chains. Because as he said, things will only change if farmers are convinced that sustainable practices are in their own best interest. Ricardo, Director for International Affairs of Soja Livre Brazil, described then the current situation of soybean production in Brazil, and also the meaning of preservation areas and challenges the farmers have to face every day. After that, Frank from Agraria, who's the European representative, presented a business case and spoke about sustainable non-GM soybean agreements and why it is needed to improve planning and LTAs, the role of LTAs, long-term agreements, in sustainable production and supply. And at the end, Will Schreiber from the Retail Soy Group, that was represented by Free Kill, focused on consumer demand. Pressure is increasing lately as consumers become more conscious of the connections between soy and the food they eat, especially regarding deforestation. The end of the supply chain experiences the most pressure for change, but it is also the least capable of directly affecting production. And he also described certification as one of the possible solutions. So today, we would like to give the floor to you to discuss with our speakers and each other on how do we deal with volatility and how can we turn the tide by offering farmers and traders more security to invest in sustainability. So with this, I would like to give the floor to Helene, the CSI coordinator. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Amisha. I will go through a couple of highlights that struck me, remarks and considerations of some of the speakers. So this is to kick off, let's say, the dialogue. Can you give the next slide, please? First, the time lag. Solidaridad talked about the time lag. The main difference between buyers, farmers, and seed developers relates to time. Buyers work on maximum 1 year long premium agreements, but farmers need at least twice as much time in advance to produce the demanded volumes, for example, of GM and free soy. And seed developers need at least 3 years ahead to supply farmers with the required seed quantities. So you see that there's a difference in planning here that's sometimes problematic. The consequences of that are, as Soja Livre clearly stated, that there can be a late or no clear market signal for non-GM soy, and that has a chain reaction. No preparation by farmers for non-GM cultivation, low seed demand in year X, then leading to low or no GM seed offer in year Y, and less or non-GM seed development in year Z. So you can say that's a downward spiral, and he also gave the figures, or they gave the figures, Solidaridad and Soja Livre. Thank you, next. So you can see that there's the soy is a very dynamic market, but there's also a downside of it, because change requires long-term partnerships, while soy is governed mostly by spot markets, where enduring relations are scarce. Soy is also a seller's market, high demand, so producers can also play hard to get towards different traders. So also from their side, sometimes long-term relationships are, shied away from. But you see that constant changes in the supply base occur as buyers respond to the fluctuating market and price changes. So long-term contracts with producers and clear aggregation points are not usual in the soy supply chain. Next one, please. So what is the perception of responsibilities? A brand can say, well, we expect the trader to convince the farmers to produce more sustainably. We give a kind of a commitment and you arrange it for us. The trader says, if we support the farmers to do so, do we run the risk to that they sell the sustainable soy to our competitors next year? So why would we invest? And farmers say, last point, if we cannot sell soy as responsible or sustainable, why would we make the effort and make the costs? Next one. So about the costs, the supply chain costs sharing is complicated in soy. There's a long supply chain and hardly long-term relations. There's maybe high prices right now, but it doesn't automatically lead to more sustainable practices. Investment sometimes goes into intensification or expansion rather than sustainability. So it's not a matter of only having that cost, only having that price in order. And also was said, premiums may not be the right word for financial solutions to sustainability. It is about joint supply chain responsibility to share costs and to internalize costs of sustainability. So what is needed is positive engagement with long-term cooperation with suppliers and traders in landscape where action is most needed to promote continuous improvement in high priority origins, meaning where problems are most severe in terms of conversion, deforestation, or social concerns. And this can be combined with traceable physical supply chains or added landscape value to certificates. Soja Livre talked about a premium contract. Next one, please. The floor is yours. So please feel free to speak out, maybe by raising your hand. We're a small group, so if you want to jump in on a particular moment, that's also fine. But maybe we can start by raising your hand. And I don't know if the speakers that were there would like to react very shortly. Let me see. I don't know. We can open the floor. Is it correct, Emerson?
Yes, absolutely. Frank, I see a virtual hand. So Frank, please. But you're on mute, Frank.
Yeah, hi, can everybody hear me?
Hey. Yes, perfect, thanks.
Good. Funny, I keep reading about the traders. Which role do they play in the future? I question the need of having the trade involved. in a longer view, we need to have a closer dialogue with the retail, with the consumer. The trader has always had a very important role, but in this very special case, and if we're trying to respond to consumer needs, consumer wishes, and in many countries, or especially in ours here in Germany, where the retail has such a dominating factor, the trade does not necessarily play a very important role in this business. We need to convince the retail that they need to organize something with the consumer at the end of that chain, or promising the consumer that things will change, or they will be able to supply sustainable, guaranteed, traceable, top grade quality meat, talking meat in this case, for the years to come. And if they are willing to do that, what do we need to trade for?
Frank, do you think that the German developments in the retail sector, if somebody is not aware, in Germany there's a very intense debate on animal welfare, and there are certain retailers that are committing, and this means also that for the feed, for example, for soy, there will be certain added sustainability requirements. Do you think, Frank, that these developments can help to get these long-term agreements and planning?
Well, we've had those discussions over years, and we've done our own calculation, and we've been guided by those larger retail groups in Germany. They told us about how many cents per kilo of sellable, workable meat a premium of X would mean in the retail price. Yes, I believe that the retail can help themselves to make more money if they would play that more openly. If they would go out, like, I mean, I don't recall, was it the last days, was Aldi who declared that they will only go for grade 3 chicken as of whatever date, I don't recall. The trade itself, by its nature, has a different role. They want to make money on the commodity by playing a position, which is good. I did that for 13 years. That was fun. But at the end of the day, it's not what the consumer wants. The consumer, I believe, has a very important role. And the retail does listen to the consumer more and more. But whether the retail itself, whether the Lidls and Aldis and co's, whether they are prepared to go into a deeper discussion with the producers, with the farmers, that I do not see yet. But that'll come. That'll take time. And we believe it takes very long, but we believe it will come. Because the trade itself, the role of the trader is, I'm not saying his part is destructive in this game, but his part is not necessary. Okay.
Very interesting. I'm very curious. Sorry to hear Will's thoughts on that after, but first, Augusta and Katarina are raising hands since a long time, so I would like to give the floor to Augusta, then Katarina, and then Will, to you to hear your thoughts, your answer. And I will stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other better. Yeah, hi everyone. So ladies first, Katarina.
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Hi again. I was actually
can you briefly introduce yourself and which organization you're from?
Sorry. My name is Katarina. I'm from Sweden. the name of my company is Agronomics, and I provide price and market information with a main target group being farmers. So I'm neutral. I don't trade. I never take my own position. I'm just trying to provide basic information that helps the farmers actually have a view on something. And it's extremely difficult, especially with the GMO-free soy, because Sweden has decided to only use GMO-free soy, but they never ever talk about it. So it's nothing they use in their marketing or anything. And right now, our chicken producers have a big problem because of the premium of the GMO-free soy, because the retailers don't believe them. When they say the premium has gone up, the problem for the chicken producers is that there's no price information on GMO-free soy available where the retailers look. They use Mintech or Reuters or Bloomberg, and none of those publish prices on GMO-free soy, which means that they claim, and for some strange reason, I'm trying to tell Swedish meat producers that I think their business model is incorrect because they have accepted with the retailers that if the price of feed goes down, the price of meat has to go down as well. Even if, you know, you have large amounts of animals being slaughtered in other countries because of some kind of disease, and the supply of the meat goes down. If the price of feed goes down at the same time, they always demand that the price of the meat goes down as well. So I just wanted to add this to the thoughts of Frank. I think it's really important to supply information, neutral price information on the news vendors where the retailers look.
Yeah, Frank, would you like to shortly react to that before giving the floor to Augusta?
Yes. I believe Katarina is absolutely right. But the retail saying that there is no access to accurate price information regarding the premiums, I believe that's absolutely wrong. They keep saying that. We heard that before. And what you expect, that is nonsense. We can provide a number of hotlines, telephone numbers, and sites where they can have a very clear 24/7 look on what's happening out there on the market. And that is less than 5 minutes work for them per day. So if they want that, we can provide it.
Thank you for that offer. Augusta, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, I was listening, and I think it's most interesting ideas. And I agree with Frank. Retailer is the ones with the power to pull the chain. I always heard that a chain cannot be pushed; it can only be pulled. And of course, consumers, okay, they have their opinion, but activists, advocacy groups, and NGOs, they can inform the consumer, because sometimes the consumer is also confused. And I believe when we talk about sustainability, this all begins with agriculture, because it is the environment. And everybody converges that there should be sustainability, the world should be much better, etc. But when it comes to paying for environmental services, and I'm not talking only about premiums, I'm talking about environmental services, because these have a value, as has been said. The grower, the farmer, they say, well, why should I bother with all these? What is in for me? So there must be a way to really pay for environmental services in the market.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, maybe Will, are you there? Would you like to react, being from the retail sector?
Yeah, I can do.
And
And
work on traders.
yeah, no, I can do. And it's a fairly short period I've got available for this too. But I think that the main thing, particularly on the pricing point, I think we need to distinguish between the raw material price versus the delivered price, and what that equates to on pack or on shelf price. If a company was to request a segregated supply chain, there's a whole load of cost that gets put into that at each node, up to the point of retail, or at least up to the point of the livestock producer, if not further. So whilst it's very clear where some premiums may lie, the supply chain costs for the various actors in passing on the segregation component is supply chain specific. And we've spoken to livestock producers, we've spoken to the traders about this too. And yes, there are some costs which are fairly straightforward, but then there are other costs that aren't. How do you have a separate feed bin? How do you separate your production from a pool system to a segregated one, particularly for that retailer? All of those questions come into it, which is why when a retailer says the costs in the supply chain aren't clear, they're not talking about the raw material price. The raw material price isn't controversial. Just like if we were talking about cocoa or palm oil, that's pretty straightforward in terms of the additional premium for just the soy. It's the other costs that go into it, which then affect the shelf price. And it's those aspects that are missing, just to respond to that point. To the next one, just in terms of why engage with the traders, I think that we're looking at a step change at the moment in terms of what the ask is for the supply chain. And the critical piece of every strategy going forward is going to be focused on transparency, so that it enables them to do risk analyses. And that dynamic means that we cannot get that information without the traders. And if we look at where the nodal points are for where we can influence soy, there's effectively 4 points. You've got the trader, which is buying from a whole host of producers. You then have the feed manufacturers, which are the direct customers of the traders. So if we want to influence the trader, the feed manufacturer has to be aligned with the request so that it's being passed on through the supply chain directly rather than indirectly, which is what's happening at the moment. You then have the livestock producers who are choosing which feed manufacturers they're sourcing from. And then you have the retailer. And effectively, you're going from the traders, which is a consolidation point, to a disaggregated system where the soy is moving through lots of smaller actors, bigger actors along the way, which have corresponding small footprints, which then gets pooled together again into a massive footprint for retail or hospitality, which is why when we're looking at the UK or France, what you see is about 50 to 60% of the soy that's in the system embedded in products is in retail shelf products. And that means that the retailers have a spotlight on them from their stakeholders for affecting change. Because if we were to identify a small feed manufacturer somewhere, it might only be 5 people that are working on it, dealing with a fairly large amount of volume. But even still, that's going to be fractional compared to what the retailer is ultimately pulling and what comes together. So we're looking at the points of efficiency for engagement, and that's really with the traders, because if we get that put right for transparency, which isn't transparent at the moment, then we should be able to get cascading elements that go down. But simply by just having the request, as has been the case for many retailer policies of transparency, we get up against the wall. We get against the wall with livestock producers, we get up against the wall with the feed manufacturers, and then we get up against the wall with the traders. And the traders are really the key to unlocking the visibility that we need in order to manage things. So just for those 2 elements, it's complex on the pricing front because it's not just the material price. And typically what we find when we've done this analysis is that the non-material price is multitudes greater than the raw material premium. for delivery. And then the second one of why focus on the traders? The traders are the gatekeepers for understanding risk, and they're not being transparent right now. We know that the Soft Commodities Forum has just released new areas that they're going to be looking at, which is certainly going to be helpful, but we don't have that visibility right now. And what we're going to be seeing, we know this, is that in the next 6 months, it's going to be holding a little bit more back of the curtain to say that soy is not as big as a problem as people say, but that's rewarding transparency as opposed to changing any practices affecting things like deforestation. So just to respond to those 2 points.
Thanks, Will. And you already shed light on that, but a little bit more. What is the role of these to let's say, because soy volatility impedes farmers to make investments in sustainability, and knowing that there's a market for it. Traders can offer transparency, but can they also offer, let's say, more, for example, longer term contracts, or whose role is that to do that?
Well, the thing is, so sorry, this is now of what each of us can actually affect, and this is why I thought it's important to separate out kind of those nodes of influence. As a retailer, we can't enter into a long-term contract with a trader. There's no direct contract with a trader in a retail space. Those contracts go through producers and they go through feed manufacturers. And if long-term contracting is going to be, I think that the traders themselves need to do long-term contracts with producers, certainly. And in order for them to have the confidence in that, they need to know what the customer demand is going to be. But the customer demand has to be their customers. And what we had from feedback, particularly over the last year, is even though there's more money that's entering the system to promote responsible soy, it's not going through the supply chain, it's bypassing the supply chain. And therefore the trader says, well, we're not actually seeing any demand because nobody's coming to us to say, do this differently. What we're seeing is people bypassing it and doing something else. I think it's very different with ProTerra from other schemes in that regard. But it is looking at that direct connection piece. And the role for long-term contracts with absolutely needs to be in the place with producers and should be in place elsewhere, not 100%. You need to hedge, on this, and it would be suicide to commercial suicide to do a long-term contract across the board. But you need to at least engage in some long-term relationships, and that needs to be measured.
How do others see that? I also invite you to open your video if you like and if you can, so that we see the other participants. Ricardo, I see you on board. Would you like to react to, you've been talking about premium contracts, etc. in your former speech?
Hello.
Hi, Ricardo.
Good morning from Brazil. I'm sorry I was late for the meeting because I didn't receive the email, probably a spam or something like that. It's happening sometimes. I just joined the meeting and I really didn't hear what you were talking about. I'm really sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry to jump on you then. We were talking about, let's say, who has the role of to engage in long-term contracts with the farmers. You talk.
Okay. Yeah, we, as I presented in the first meeting we had, and I think I'm sorry for this delay, but I am Soja Livre Institute is probably the most interested part on this discussion, right, that we are having today. We are seeing the non-GM soybeans reducing the production year after year, because of this non-transparency on the premium. I know that people from Europe that are interested in buying the meal or the soybean meal or the grain, they pay a lot. Now they are paying more than $100 per ton, and the farmers don't have a premium contracted before. So myself as a farmer, we had problems to receive the premium for the last 2 crops. So this is very bad for the decisions we make here. On producing non-GM or not. So that's what we would like to set, like a contract with the premium previously. So this will give more transparency and will promote the non-GM production here in Brazil, right? Right now, what is going on that many farmers, because the premium is very high right now compared to the last 2 years for non-GM, but now the farmers are looking for the non-GM varieties, and it's just a few in the market because the seed producers also are not encouraged to produce non-GM when they don't sell the seeds in 1 year. They have to sell the seed for the common market, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the discussion points we would like to have. If it's possible or not, this contract directly with the farm. People from ProTerra that we talked to, Augusto and Fernando. Fernando is probably he will join the meeting also. Yeah,
Just did.
He's
just did.
He is there. He's here.
Yeah, he joined.
Yeah.
Yes, Ricardo, because we discussed also in the first few minutes, just to give you a summary, also the role of different actors in the supply chains. Who do you think is responsible for really creating that transparency in order to have those long or midterm contracts? We mentioned there were the retailers that were mentioned, feed mills, and other traders. Who do you think is responsible, and what is needed? What kind of information is needed, and when, in order to be able to plan in advance and commit you on the long term?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sorry you asked it before I did. Okay, now I see Augusto there. Hello, Augusto. I was in the right position of the camera, wrong position, I guess. Well, I really don't know. Maybe it's something that we could understand how it's going to be, because Augusto always tell me, and Fernando, they tell me, but this guy,
we're not hearing you.
Interested in buying grain. They pay for meal. We don't sell meal. We are the farmers, but we have the grain for sale, right? So it's an issue that we have to understand how.
Ricardo, you're breaking up.
Yeah, his internet connection doesn't seem to be
it's
very good.
Ricardo, could you try please to turn off the video? Maybe it helps, because we didn't hear the last part. Fortunately, we lost you.
Yeah, the connection is not very good.
Better, but, thank you. Can you please repeat the last half sentence?
I was saying that because some European companies, they want to buy the meal, and we don't have the meal for sale. We just have the grains because we are farmers, right? This is something that we have to understand how we can go through. Yeah, I guess we can do this together, because we are interested in the premium. So are the companies in Europe. So how can we understand to put these two sides in contact? Yeah. Maybe this can go through the trading companies, right? No problem with that. We have some trading companies at our institute. By the way, we had elections last week, and the new president is one of the associates of Caramuru, which is a trading company that does lots of meal and grain to Europe. If I had the email before, I'm very sorry about that, because I would like to invite him, Mr. Cesar. I guess Emesh and Augusto know him very well.
I invited him. I forwarded the invitation to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would Augusto like to react? And then Frank?
Yeah, we know that this is a very long, non-hierarchical chain with players pulling in different directions, everybody looking at their own interest. in the past, Olaf Bruchmann has described this very well, so I understand Frank's point. Players many times agree to disagree. So a sectorial agreement, which I believe would be the solution, as has been in some cases already, should be pulled by the retailers as the organizers of all this and helped by everybody else, because we need a sectorial agreement. It's a lot of different players. And when you talk about deforestation or keeping the forest up there intact, it is agriculture, it's farms. So how do we reach all this? Because it ends up on retail shelves and all that, but deforestation is on the ground and people want zero deforestation. So we've been talking a lot about this. The convergence is that everybody wants this, but the divergence is that nobody wants to pay for the environmental services, very frankly speaking. So we have to find a solution. And perhaps those with the most power are the retailers, although the chain is very long, full of actors, but there must be some pull, some orientation in this whole chain so that the sectorial agreements, multi-sectorial actually, because it's different countries and different areas, but this has to be reached somehow if we really want zero deforestation to happen.
Thank you. I see the hands of Frank and of Fernando. Frank, shortly, and I'm also asked to ask you if you can share your links that Will asked for.
We will do that.
Yeah,
we will do that.
Okay.
Trying to get back to the initial question, where should all this start? At the end of the day, the consumer will tell us what we want to eat. So I believe there's a whole lot of responsibility within the retail to come to talk to us. I mean, we opened our doors as wide as possible. We're happy to talk to anybody about a possible continuous and very transparent supply chain. But they need to come to us. The rules of the game out there on the market in many, many commodities has changed. There are more and more LTAs popping out of the ground because people out there, markets are feeling insecure about a continuous supply guarantee in whatever product. And this is not only linked to our agribusiness, but also to many other industries. And we believe that there's a fair chance to see a change of modus vivendi, how we're going to operate all markets in the decades to come. And this is something where we need to build up some trust between the partners in that supply chain. And that, like I said early on before, that'll take some time, that may take some years. But at the end of the day, it's the consumer who tells us what he wants. And the retail has to respond to that. And in order to make that happen, they can come and talk to any of us, what the possibilities are. We're happy to talk premiums, talking raw material prices. And that was a very fair comment from Will when he said we must differentiate between prices and premiums. Premiums is something we can manage. Raw material prices, there it becomes very political. And but we can influence them too. We have a certain degree of how we can play that game. But at the end of the day, the retail knows that we have the tools in hand to manage a very safe and transparent calculation, allowing them to calculate their business. But so far, it is our impression that that was not really needed, or that was not wanted. The EBITDA margins of the retail, they are so low. They became rich via the volume, and they don't seem to take an interest to make, well, that's not true. Sorry, I apologize for anybody from the retail who's listening. that's a different game. And we're open to talk about everything. I mean, raw material prices, yeah, okay, that's a different story. But premiums and anything that is connected to that, we can talk for years. We can guarantee secure, safe prices, safe parts of the calculation for years. But the people need to come and talk to us.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. The invitation is quite clear. I have Fernando here and Katarina. Please, Fernando.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. What I think we have to address is where the gap between the farmers, the crushers, and the retailers is right now. Because the thing is, what I have always heard is that the problem is the timing and the quantities. So, for instance, the suppliers to the retailers in Europe, they complain that they don't have enough advance notice in order to prepare the supply chain below them. And the same thing for the farmers. So, for instance, right now, the farmers in Brazil will start planting by September. And the crushers in Brazil, they are already discussing with the farmers about quantities, because they need to buy the seeds, they need to start planting and everything else. So it's a process that ideally should start a year ahead, so everybody can prepare and be ready for that, including the premium, because that's when they have to negotiate with the farmers. The farmers have to know how much they will need to segregate, which warehouses they have to prepare for that and everything else. And Brazil is suffering with warehousing. It's not an easy deal in Brazil. We don't have enough warehousing for the whole production, which keeps growing year by year. On the crusher side, the problem is even more complicated, because they have to deal with segregation. You have to, it doesn't work to have two lines of products in one crushing plant. So they have to dedicate a full crushing plant, at least for some time of the year, to be dedicated exclusively for that. They are managing that today. They start the season with the GMO-free, and then when they complete their commitments to the buyers in Europe, then they start crushing GM material to the rest of the year for a few months in order to keep the plant running. But that's not a good deal. The ideal thing would be to have at least one crushing plant working the full year in order not to have any losses, operational losses. So at the end of the chain, at the retailers, they don't know anything about that, because they don't, they are mostly dealing with the European scenario. So the environment in the supply in Brazil or in other countries, it's very distant from there. And also, as Frank very well put, they have very tight margins. They don't have the price the consumer pays is not that different, because you have a dedicated market also in Europe. You have the poultry, milk, and eggs that is dedicated to GMO-free or non-GM production, which doesn't have that large margin. So the whole problem is how to overcome this obstacle. How can you please everyone? So one of the suggestions, and I guess Ricardo included that in his presentation last time, is to work something out of the market, because it's very hard to deal with the market, a market that's subject to a lot of variables that change every month, if not every day, and put everything in a secure way that everybody will be pleased 1 year ahead. So Ricardo's suggestion, and I tend to agree with him in that, is if we can create a parallel premium or something that is based on sustainability. So let's say that Ricardo has 1,000 hectares in Brazil, and he grows GMO-free. As soon as he harvested that, and the product is registered in a certificate warehouse, then you can issue a bond, a green bond or a sustainable bond that can be commercialized in the market. So Ricardo is safe because he doesn't need to wait until all the chain moves to receive his reward for that. And for what I have followed in the market, we have seen green bonds created every day based on much weaker foundation than the non-GM chain is. So I guess most, if not all, of the non-GM farmers are in compliance with every single item in the sustainability list. So if we can put this into practice and find a partner in the financial market to build this bond, then we will create something that will help the whole chain.
Thank you, Fernando, for your points. I see three more hands, Katarina, Evert, and Ricardo, but I guess that Ricardo, maybe you would like to jump on this very shortly before I give the floor to Katarina and Evert, because it's your subject.
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, this proposal about the bonds we've been discussing here with Fernando and Augusto sometimes, it's a good idea, because probably the farmers can launch a bond in the market, and somebody will pay it, and then will buy it, and then maybe the trading companies will receive that as a payment also, or a discount on their premium, the premium that they collect in the market. Here, another point is that last week we had a meeting here with Soja Livre Institute on something like that, because a green bond with it's becoming very popular here in Brazil. It's in the starting, but will become very popular, and maybe we can work together with European side to finance, the farmers, a bank, a local bank maybe, and then this kind of bond will give a discount on the interest rate, which is an indirect premium for the non-GMO producer also, but we have to understand who are we going to talk to, because maybe it's not the retailers, not the companies or whatever, right? So this is a point that we should understand when we talk about this, okay? Yeah. But this bond, the bond idea is a very nice one. I understand as a good one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will give the floor to Katarina, then Evert, and I might also ask Emmertje for a reaction to this.
It's interesting when you're talking about green bonds. Another alternative, which I'm a little bit surprised is never mentioned, is futures contracts. Because if I was a farmer and I will be able to follow the price of genetically modified soy every single day to prepare my mind for what's happening, to give me information I know is not from my trader. And then I compare that to not having access to neutral information. We're talking about transparency. That's the main theme for today. And if we can't have, if the only alternative is to ask people to give away their trade secrets, I don't think a lot will happen. Whereas futures markets as a neutral marketplace provide something else. And sometimes people think that the biggest advantage of a futures market is that you can hedge your price, but maybe providing the transparency is the most important part of what the exchange does.
Thank you. You highlight transparency again. We're also highlighting the importance of long-term, let's say, agreements for farmers to know what they invest in, etc. Evert, would you?
May I pop in just one question, Katarina, when you mentioned transparency, what kind of transparency do you look at? Because this is also interesting, I think, what certain companies sometimes, or certain actors in the supply, understand also a different thing under transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, a trader will never ever give away information which will hurt his trade.
Yeah, okay.
And the trade is based on, you know, buying at a lower price and selling at a slightly higher price. So either I think that there needs to be information provided by brokers who don't own the commodity, only take a commission, or if
I mean, kind of a consolidated, anonymous kind of data set that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that could either be made, I mean, exactly like Reuters and Bloomberg and Mintech does. You bring in information from different sources. You make sure they are not all traders. There has to be some people who actually don't make money on whether the price goes up or down. And when I mentioned futures markets, I think that's very, very different to the long-term agreements you talk about, which I look more at as forward contracts. So I think there's a big difference to information collected by trades made by anyone who's willing to follow the rules on a neutral futures exchange.
Thank you.
And then you have both the advantage of that, I mean, that is available on the genetically modified markets. If a farmer wants to be able to follow the market, the price movements, to feel safe that he's not cheated on the price, then
Thank
that
you.
has to
I'd
be
like to-
available.
Yeah, thank you very much for explaining your point. I'd like to go on to Evert. We have 4 minutes to go. So
Hi, Elaine. Thanks. I'll be brief. At least I'll try to be. Hi, everybody. My name is Evert. I represent RTRS in Europe. I'd like to begin by reacting to what Frank said, is maybe leave out the trade, focus on the retail and the consumers. I agree, the retail is extremely important. I think they're really a catalyst behind the whole debate that we see. So it's very, very important. Consumers, yes, I'm one of them. We all are, but consumers are emotional, and consumers are easily confusing, let's say, discussions on, for example, deforestation, and saying deforestation equals soy production. That is a reality. That's how we see it here. I think that sectors, commodities like palm oil, RSPO, has been seeing similar challenges, and definitely that has already led to extreme situations in some of the EU countries. So I think my point here is that yes, we need to engage very strongly with retail, and we need to create awareness among consumers. But I don't think that leveraging one group to change the entire supply chain is really the way to go about it. Another thing is that in retail with consumers, a lot is being said, a lot is being discussed, but we don't see any change in behavior, in the sense that we are really willing to pay the price for environmental services. I think that was mentioned by someone else before. That is still very low on the priority list of most Europeans. We want a lot, but are we really willing to pay for it? So far, hardly. And I think that's really a big challenge. And if we feel that we need to change this by, for example, changing a commercial mechanism like long-term agreements, then let me quickly give you an anecdote of what I've seen in the tea industry. Long-term agreements are in the tea industry much more common for the simple reason that tea is a very special product. So a trader and a plantation owner or a smallholder, they have long-term agreements because they want to have the right quality of tea. That's a little bit less, of course, an issue in the soy trade. But has that led to any fundamental change in the pricing system for tea? No. Has it led to an increase of the price of already dirt cheap tea in supermarkets? No. Therefore, has it led to fundamental changes on the ground for tea, for people working in tea and the circumstances that they are in? Hardly, I can say. So it is not, again, a kind of a silver bullet. I don't believe personally that would be the only way to continue on it. What I do believe is that we need, first of all, a level playing field. A level playing field is what Europe is working on, the European Commission in the EU. So we need legislation. I think if we look at it from certification point of view, like RTS, ProTerra, we have always been in a context of voluntary engagement and commitments. That is, of course, very difficult. So having a mandatory system to back it up in the sense of a legislation, very, very helpful. I am only a little bit concerned here that
Robert, we ran out of time. I give 15 seconds. Sorry.
15 seconds. I think in that legislation and how to implement it, we need harmonization instead of leaving all companies and everybody to reinvent the wheel themselves. I would really hope that we place a reinvented role for certification to help create the transparency through traceability, and also to set one bar of criteria that apply to all, instead of asking very different things from all different stakeholders in the supply chain.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, but
Amici, the last word to you.
So Augusto, Fernando, you each both have 15 seconds and we have to do a hard stop. So Fernando, what are your summarizing 15 seconds?
Yeah, so I'll try to be very fast. The thing is, I agree with everyone. And I think the most important thing is to start talking because we have to put everyone in the chain to discuss and find a solution. I don't think it's impossible to find a solution. The problem is that it has never been discussed along the whole chain. And unfortunately, the GMO-free market, it doesn't work 100% aligned with Chicago. To start with, everything is discussed based on the High-Pro 48 soybean meal. And in Brazil, the discussion with the farmers is based on beans, the two separate and different markets. So we really need to start discussing it. Ideas will come. People, I think everybody is willing to help, but we really need to engage everyone in the whole supply chain and the buyer's hand.
And this is also the aim of events like today: bring together the people, have an open, good discussion, and get started and understand what's needed and what's happening on the other side. Augusto, the last 15 seconds, and then we really have to stop.
Thank you. I just want to say that chains are very different. Tea ends up as tea on the shelf. Soy is completely hidden in the product. It's very different. We tried to compare in the past, even palm oil. Okay, these chains work completely different, so new solutions will have to be found. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for participating and being with us. Stay tuned. Even after the summer break, we will come with new webinars, discussions, dialogues to continue bringing together the stakeholders, just as you mentioned, Fernando, and have that open discussion and make things improve and bring them together. Thank you,
Maybe
everyone.
we need more time, Amici. A little longer.
Yes, time is never on our side. So thank you so much. Enjoy your summer, and the recording will be shared with you afterwards. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.